So let's break it down to what's going on here. I do have a lot of mics up, and after all the years, I've kind of picked things that now, 2021, I feel not only deserving, but I've spent a little extra money to get nicer microphones. A little secret on the kick drum, so we'll start with the kick drum. This kick drum mic, I have a FET 47, and I could be a fancy guy, and I'm gonna use a FET 47 because, whoa, like every big studio has one. But my favorite kick drum over the FET 47 is called a Bach 195, or also a Sound Deluxe 195. It has these switches on the backside, and I use it on fat, you know what I'm saying? And then low cut. And what the fat does, it hypes up and it boosts the low end frequencies. Then you put the cut and it cuts that off. I have a pop filter in front of that. I know you'd be like, why would you do that? I don't know. I just think it sounds a little bit better, and I don't want any pressure except for that kick drum because it's so big. Like I said, no hole. It's about maybe like 4 inches out from the kick drum, not dead center of the beater, a little bit lower than that. And that's kind of the way I like it. But it's going to be big. It's going to be totally out of control. To counter that out of control, I do have another mic on the other side. If you want to go around, I'll show you. So I'm double micing the kick drum because he doesn't have a hole in it. And on this mic, I'm using a Beyer dynamic microphone. An incredible bass guitar mic. If I even had that just on the kick drum, that would be cool. So I have double mic front and back. And I'm not assuming that you know this, but if you ever double mic drums, usually you have to flip the phase on one of them. So I'm flipping the phase on the beater side. I'm keeping the outside one in phase because you want to have in phase with your kick drum, your overhead. And I'm doing kind of a Zeppelin setup here, and I'm doing using a record drums. I try to do maybe 2 to 3 setups within the drum set, and that's because sometimes I don't know what the band's going to do, but I want to make sure I capture everything. So my number one setup is kind of the Glenn Johns or the Zeppelin setup. I got overhead, and I got a side shot coming across, and kick drum and snare. That could be kit number one. And then if it's somehow dynamics or more 70s, or you want more control, then I can flip on the toms and the hi-hat or the ride. Now the snare, I have 2 mics on this, 57 on the top, and because it's double mic'd, I have a mic on the bottom, and you flip the mic on the bottom. Now I gotta say, sometimes a rare moment that maybe it's in phase, but just you gotta always check it. But usually 9 out of 10, the bottom mic needs to be flipped out of phase or your snare will sound really thin. The mic on the bottom is a 414. Sometimes I have a Biodynamic 201, which has the craziest cancellation around it. So if you have a snare and you don't want anything else, you don't want hi-hats, you don't want anything in your drum, a Beyer 201 is just incredible. This actual snare is now it's old, Black Beauty. It's the same one he's had almost as long as I've known him. What's a Black Beauty? That would be, most big records, could be from Nirvana, Soundgarden, I don't know, AC/DC, anybody 80s or anybody trying to make a cool record. Black Beauties, you can't go wrong. So the toms are not double mic'd. I was going to maybe double mic them, but the song that we're doing today doesn't really have a lot of tom action, and maybe some other time I'll do this alternative miking of the toms, but this is going to be traditional. So the toms are mic'd because that's the second kit within the recording. So the first kit is kind of the bottom kit, and then if I want control over the toms, I have mics on them. These are Audio-Technica 230s. They discontinued them. They had a drum pack that I think you can buy for like $200 or $250. And amongst my engineer friends, I was told that they're some of the best mics you can get for toms have great cancellation. I am spot miking the drums, and these are spot mic'd with these. These are called AKG 224Es. I think they can go back to the Abbey Road era, and as crazy as they look, it's a dynamic. And there's two elements inside. There's a high element, like a high end element and low end element. They're really expensive. And usually I'd not be the guy to spend a lot of money on a dynamic mic, but when I heard it, not knowing it was that, I had to get that mic. And then I come to find out that these mics are something like Neil Young would use on Harvest Moon. If you can try them out and you know they're from a credible source, I would definitely recommend AKG 224Es for what I just explained. Now the overheads, now I have one overhead, I have a single overhead, and then I have this mic right here. These are C12As, and they have brass capsules, and they're tube microphones. I could be wrong, but I'm going to say they're 60s. This one's a Noralco, and this one's an AKG. Same company, just different brands. Even the mic power supplies, one says Noralco, one says AKG. Physically looking at them, they look completely different cables, everything's different about them. Even the bodies of the mics look the same, but the outsides with the mounts are a little bit different. These mics, the reason I bought them is they're incredibly closely matched. And I don't know how that is because they are just different mics, but they sound so good together. The only thing else I have on the drums are some room mics, which we'll go check them out. So these two power supplies are the AKGs for the overhead and the floor. But these ones are really unique. These are 1950s tube mics, and they're called M11s. The capsules are Omnis. I think their capsules are 21Ds. The only mics I have outside of the drums, I don't have anything. Sometimes I could put a mic right here, but I already know that this song and how my drummer plays, the drums should be pretty big. But I do want some room sounds. So these are Omnis. They're Altex M11s. They're on the floor. That's where they sound good. And I think in the old days when they had theaters and stuff, they still placed them on the floor. There's probably small stands that you can have them on. I was hip to these mics in about, I think it was 1989. We had done our band's second record with Steve Albini. And I didn't know what they were, except he said, don't step on those mics. And they were called Coke bottle mics. And how can you forget a Coke bottle mic? So anyways, Steve actually showed me, was one of the first guys to kind of take me aside and show me how to record, because after we recorded our second record, I was signed to an indie deal, and I asked the label if we could use our money to possibly buy some gear. And Steve agreed to let me fly to Chicago. So flying to Chicago, I took a list of microphones. I watched him record for, I think it was about a week, and just took a lot of notes. And these are always been on my bucket list to get. And fair warning, if you get some of these Altex, most likely they may be broken. So make sure, as long as the bottle's not broken and the capsules work, if it's a little bit noisy, they just need to be recapped. So that was not, both of these have been recapped, and one of them had a cable replaced. And I gotta say, they're most amazing mics because they don't pick up any cymbals. I know it sounds crazy, but if a guy's bashing the drums, you really get the meat and potatoes of the drums. And these mics, once again, they just don't get any, they got enough low end, but it's kind of old school. And then the upper frequencies are just gone, wiped away. Now, a lot of these mics are kind of expensive and hard to find, but I don't use these because, I'm Mr. Fancy Guy. I use them because after all the years of working with bands and doing live performances, I've been lucky enough to try some of these and know that they're tried and true. So I bought these mics. Now, if you don't have any money and you're like, well, this is all just, I'm talking some other kind of language because you can't afford this kind of setup, some alternates to this would be, instead of getting two mics, you can buy some Octava. I think the newest mics, they come in a box set and they have omnidirectionals. Those sound really great on the floor. On the snare, you can use the cardio capsule for the snare. Those mics are a few $100. The overheads, the two mics that I'm using could be replaced with ribbon mics. There's a cool company called Stager, Stager, and they sell a set of ribbons for like, I want to say like $900, and they sound really good. And you can basically get a pair of those, and even though it's $1,000, if you're serious about recording, it's an investment that will make you happy. And that's why I did that. So if you can switch those out with ribbons, switch these out with octavas. You need a drummer and you need a cool drum set, but basically you can get away with some really cool recordings.